Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since we put out one of these long form ones, so today we're going to kickstart back in with a big one. We're going to do the full how to list from start to finish, from picking an agent to getting through closing. I have the full series up on my Instagram if you want to see any of the distinct parts that I broke down there. It's a little quicker. This will be probably a little more in depth, a little more of me rambling. So we're going to start out from the beginning, work our way through. As always, if you have any questions, throw those in the comments. Feel free to reach out. All of my links will be below. If you think this is useful, I'm going to put out a buying one, open house, appraisals, closings. I'll start working my way through the Philadelphia suburban real estate market. I'll go through the towns, what it's like to live in each of these towns. I grew up here, I live here now. I feel like I have a pretty good sense, but let's dive in. So the first step is obviously picking a real estate agent. And there are a few things to look for in an agent: competence, history of negotiation, but I'll give you some secrets about picking an agent. The vast majority of agents do the exact same thing. They're going to post once about your house on social media. They'll get it up on the MLS. They'll get it on Redfin. They'll get it on Zillow. You'll probably end up on about 5 different sites online. They're going to have an open house the first weekend or two. They're going to market it again with probably one post on social media. And then they're going to hope a buyer comes in at a price that you'll accept. And from there, they're kind of just riding that wave until closing, hoping nothing goes wrong with inspections, hoping that they don't really have to negotiate on your behalf, hoping that your house gets appraised at value. So then there's no negotiation about whether you're going to concede some things, whether you're going to get concessions from the sellers. And then they're going to be at closing. They're going to hand you like a bottle of wine, a bottle of champagne, maybe a basket, and they're never going to follow up with you. There are some aspects to that are kind of par for the course. Yes, you obviously should have the listing on more than just the MLS, but it should be more than just Zillow and Redfin too. There are a lot of avenues, both through traditional media and through social media, to get eyes on your home. It should be more than one post. It should be the lifestyle that comes with your house. What are the local amenities that are associated with your house? What's the neighborhood like? How can someone spend a day in your home? Making it so that people can see themselves in the home before they show up for the open house, before they show up for a scheduled tour, so that the tour is just confirming the fact that they already love your home. And now you're getting multiple offers. Now you're having people compete against each other, and you're getting that ideal price. So all that together is how someone should be marketing your home at just a basic level. I have multiple guides on my website if you want to check them out that go into that in a little more detail. And then again, working with me, you'll get more detail than that. So there's kind of 3 levels of detail here on how to market a home. This is as basic as it gets, but still more than what a lot of agents are doing out there. The next are negotiation skills. And you can really get this in 2 different ways. One, they can learn negotiation on this job. That maybe they've been a realtor for 20 years, but then maybe they've been having that same style of negotiation for 20 years. They win some, they lose some. Overall, their clients are pretty happy, but they're not making big gains for their clients in that negotiation window of listing a home. Or you can have someone who went to school, took classes on negotiation, had basically a decade of experience litigating, which is essentially one giant negotiation. You can pick which feels better for you. I personally like the training, but it's up to you. So a lot goes into picking an agent, but you got to focus on what differentiates agents. It's marketing and it's negotiation skills. Everything else is kind of just how the system works right now. But we just spoke about price a little bit. So price is the next biggest part of listing your home. And there's going to be a few probably touchy subjects that come along with price. The first being, you probably have a price that you want in your head. And maybe it's the perfect price to list your home at. But before we dive into all of that, there are two prices associated with listing your home. There's the list price and there's the sale price. And you can't think of the list price as the sale price. The list price is a tool to get to the ultimate goal of that ideal sale price. Just like open houses are, just like showings are, just like social media marketing is, staging, all of this is designed to maximize that sale price. So once you can stop thinking of the list price as if we don't get this, we're screwed, so I'm gonna list it high, then you can start thinking strategically about how do we ultimately get to our goal of whatever that sale price is. And now you can use list price to your advantage rather than thinking of a price in your mind and being unwilling to budge. Which gets me to my second point. I've said this in previous videos. Maybe I've said it in every video I've made. It is better to price the list price too low than too high. Too low can create competition, which will ultimately bring the price back up. Too high, and now you're pricing people out. People are going to wait for the price to potentially drop. Once it drops once, they're going to wait for another drop. The psychology is bad. You don't build momentum early, and you might be sitting for quite a bit of time. Or worst case scenario, now you're delisting the property, start the whole process over, maybe a week later, maybe a month later, maybe unfortunately sometimes a year later. Your timeline's messed up. You probably ultimately won't get back to that sale price you could have gotten if you priced correctly that first time. And then part and parcel with choosing the correct list price to obtain your goal sale price is figuring out price brackets that buyers are searching in. So maybe your home is, we go through it all together. You have your price you believe that we should sell at. I come in with mine. We figure out the ideal listing price for your home after some discussion. And we determine that it's $810,000. The problem with an $810,000 or $805,000, $815,000, you're at the bottom end of a price bracket. And that does two things. One, it cuts out all those buyers who are going to cap out at $799,000 or at $8,000. So now you're getting potentially half as many eyes on your home. And a lot of those people who are capped at $799,000, if your home looks like an unbelievable value at $799,000 and now there's a bidding competition about it, they're probably willing to go up $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $25,000. I've been talking to a few buyers recently who thought they had their cap, they found a home they loved, they came up and they're very happy with their decision because they are perceiving that they got value at that price for the home that they ultimately purchased. So understanding the psychology of pricing in addition to the fact that list price is a goal, not the end all be all, which is ultimately sale price. So there are a lot of technical processes that go into deciding price. We find geographically similar, layout similar, age similar, renovation similar homes. We use those as comparables. We want to get as close to your home as possible. It's better to compare to 2 other identical homes than 5 somewhat similar homes that aren't that geographically homogeneous. We use that data, we adjust for various amenities. Maybe one of those has a pool, yours doesn't, vice versa. Maybe they have an extra half bath. We price all of that data in, then we use market data like sale to list to sale ratio, days on market, and we come to that ideal price. Now, pretty much every at least good realtor can do all of that, but now you have to factor in all of the psychological stuff that we just talked about. We have to talk about how much competition can we create with this price, because that will ultimately drive up the sale price. So all of this comes together and we determine the ideal listing price for your home. Just want to make sure I'm hitting everything. So why do we want to see that ideal sales price? That in conjunction with pre-market marketing, with that first week on market marketing, we're looking to maximize showings, open houses, and views in that first really single 24 hours, the first 48 hours, and ultimately that first week. The first week is critical. That's where you build a ton of momentum. Not that if you sit longer than a week, it's a problem. The average days on market right now in most of the Philly suburbs is somewhere around that 3-week mark. So if we're sitting there for 3 weeks, that's a normal process. But maximizing that first week, then you're in competition those next 2 weeks, and now we're getting closings after that, rather than now we're blowing through the 3-week window, maybe we don't have any offers yet, and now we're starting to have those tougher conversations, which we should have if we get to that point, about do we need to make a price correction? Do we need to delist, refigure out the strategy, and come back to market in a different way, whether that's marketing, price, style of showing? Do we do open houses now if we didn't previously? So all of this comes together into that pre-market strategy. We get together our media plan based on both your comfortability and what I think has worked best in the Philadelphia suburban real estate market. We have a price that's meant to entice as many showings, as many eyes on the home as possible, and those in conjunction are how we start the listing process. Before we fully come to market, before we're open for showings, before we host any open houses, we have to go through at least a modicum of preparation for your home. Now, this can be anywhere from maybe your home's stunning, you've done a ton of work on the front end of listing your home, and maybe it's just we do one weekend, we bring a cleaner in for a couple $100. Now it smells great, everything looks great. You guys plan to be gone for 4 hours each day of one weekend. It's beautiful, thing gets sold. Your life really doesn't get interrupted. That's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is full staging. We're clearing out everything. Maybe we're painting, maybe we have to redo a floor or two. We're bringing in a company to do the staging because maybe you're already moved out, your furniture is somewhere else, so we need to make this home look as it would look if someone was living there in their ideal dream world. Usually it falls somewhere between those two. Usually there's some cleaning, maybe some fixing some chips in the paint, some scratches from the kids, from the dogs, whatever it might be. My dog's sleeping on my foot right now. If and when we ever sell this house, the amount of stuff that we're gonna have to clean from her is insane. Also, I have 2 little kids, and they're doing their best to keep up with the puppies in terms of destruction. So I'm with you on that. Before we dive deeper into what preparation looks like, what staging looks like, we should talk about renovations. I've talked about this briefly before. The vast majority of renovations, you're not going to see a positive ROI. If you're thinking about doing that $50,000 kitchen reno, $25,000 main bathroom reno, fully finishing the basement, you can argue with the basement, especially if you put another bedroom down there, if you have windows, that sometimes you'll get a positive ROI. But in general, those are gonna sit at like a 70-80% return on investment, which essentially means if you're doing like a $50,000 kitchen, you're gonna lose $10,000 doing that. You'll make 40 of it back. So there are a few that do consistently in the Philadelphia suburbs have a positive ROI. That's painting your front door, replacing your front door, painting your garage doors, replacing your garage doors, and landscaping. I think landscaping can make a big difference. People, just like when you meet a new person, when you're about to watch a new movie, read a new book, as much as we try not to, we judge books by their covers. We judge homes by their presentation. The walk to the front door, those first few steps in the home can make or break what someone thinks about your home. So having proper signage outside, which is part of marketing, I will handle that. But having beautiful landscaping to the extent that you can make a big difference. The others, I mean, if your front door is falling apart, if your garage door is falling apart, we should probably fix it. But other than that, I wouldn't expect to have to do big renos unless it's livability stuff. So if you have rotting out floors, we're going to have to address that. If you have a deck that's on the verge of collapse, we're probably going to have to address that. But other than that, I would get big renos out of your mind, unless you're in that uber luxury bracket. Really, I'm thinking 1.5 million plus, because the buyer pool is so much smaller. You have a sense of what they're looking for. You can kind of tailor a kitchen reno or a bathroom reno to position your home against comparables in the market to stand out a bit. And that's where you see those anomalous positive ROIs on those bigger home renovations. But the real goal with prep, with staging, is to remove buyer hesitation. It gets back to that first few steps in the door, the walk up to the front door. You don't want someone saying, God, it just looks so good in those pictures. Maybe they did something special on that day and it's really not going to look like this. You want people to fall in love with the pictures that we take in that pre-market stage, and then have all of those feelings confirmed when they're here for a showing or an open house. That's how you get multiple offers early on. You also want to document as much as you can in this pre-market stage, in the staging stage. So the age of your roof, the age of your windows, the age of the HVAC system, when have they been updated, when have repairs been done on these, all of your appliances if you have that information, when did you get your fridge, washer, dryer. All of this stuff is useful. I'm of the opinion that just having that information and presenting it assuages a lot of fears that buyers may have. Just the ability to be open and forthcoming with that information makes people think you're not hiding something. So even if there are some minor issues, maybe you have a slightly older roof, but it's fully functional, then buyers are like, well, it's been working for them. They showed us all the information. Why wouldn't it work for us? Whereas maybe you redid the roof relatively recently in the last 5 years, you just don't have the documentation, and then you have some buyer's father-in-law come through and he's pointing out every potential issue with the roof. He doesn't really have a sense of what a new roof may look like, and now a deal's blown up just because you couldn't put that fear to bed early on. So getting that documentation together is just another streamlining process for people to not say no to your home. So I'll briefly talk about what to address first in terms of prep and staging, and then some minor details that are very controllable that you can easily implement even day of a showing, day of an open house. So the fear items first. So this is what we were just talking about. Roof, HVAC, age, and documentation. If you have any water signs, getting those checked out beforehand. Being able to prove, yeah, my kid just spilled stuff on the wall. We didn't paint over it. And then you're just in concession land rather than people backing out of deal land. Any obvious deferred maintenance you have, this is like the deck that might be a little bit older. And then anything that signals to buyers that this home might come with surprise costs. You want to put those fears to bed as early and as cleanly as possible. And then you're staging for function, not style. So you might have the best taste in the world. You might be a professional home decorator, but that style isn't necessarily going to appeal to the masses. So what we want to be able to walk into a room and clearly understand what the purpose of that room is. So if you're walking to a home office, we want essentially just a desk, a chair, and non-personal items on the walls. We want clean traffic flow, so as people walk through, they can, my puppy's sleeping right now and snoring. Make it easy to walk through each room, easy for people to access each room. Make the primary bedroom feel like a retreat. We want people to think that they're buying an oasis, essentially. And then a minor point, but closets should look 50 to 60% full. So you're going to take some of those items out beforehand, leave them at a friend's, leave them at family's house. Buyers love storage. So they don't want to see something that's empty because it's tough to get a full sense of scale. But understanding, oh, there's plenty of places to put stuff in here. This is how the current residents are using it. That makes sense in my mind. That's all they want to see. And then some easy stuff that you can do day of. I'll obviously help with this if we are working together, but open blinds, replace dim bulbs, color match the temperature Warm lighting, not cold lighting. That sterile overhead doctor's office feel is not what people want to feel in a home. As many lamps as you can have rather than the recessed overhead lighting is big. We're gonna try and remove oversized furniture. This gets back to the flow issue. And then neutralize smells. So we don't want big, huge, like cinnamon smells coming through, but also, let's say it's been a rainy week, the dogs have to go outside at some point. That just happens to be the week that we're about to host a few open houses. We're gonna have to get someone in probably day of that open house in the morning, just get that smell out of the carpets, because you don't want people walking in, all they smell is wet dog, and then all they can think about is, I wonder how many times those dogs peed in this house. So just getting ahead of that. Okay, so we'll dive a little bit more deeply into marketing now. I touched on it earlier. So we need to treat, I'm trying to hit everything that I didn't touch on earlier. Treat showings and open houses like another tool, not like we just got to check this off the list. Showings should happen at pretty much every listing unless you already know you have a buyer and I'm really just here to facilitate a transaction. Showings are going to always happen. We need to prep for each showing like this is going to be the person buying the house. Let's make this as nice as possible for them. That's why that first week is so important, so we're not interrupting your life for weeks on end. We can do 4 days of just bang, 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 showing. House stays the same level of clean the whole time. Now it's sold, you're done, and you don't have to ever deal with that again until the next move. And this brings me to open houses as a tool. Not every home should have an open house, and there are going to be a number of factors that go into this, so it's going to be specific to your home that you're selling. But for example, if you live on an unbelievably busy street with absolutely zero parking out in the suburbs, and it's hard for people to get to you, it's hard for people to park when they get there, it's going to be tough to have an open house that doesn't just highlight that for everyone. So that might be a scenario where we really focus on showings and marketing. Another instance where it might not make sense to have open houses is you're just extremely private people. Maybe you want me walking through with every potential seller and we just focus on showings. At least I'm there for all of them. I do not recommend any seller to be at any open house or showing. You have an enormous emotional attachment to your home, potentially positive, potentially negative. That's gonna come through when the people are walking through. We don't want to sway them either way, and people don't like going through a place with someone looking over their shoulder the whole time. The other one is if you're in a niche luxury market and you know there's only so many buyers, you know that they're waiting a little longer, waiting for the perfect place, you can get away with showings only because those people are going to be actively hunting for a home like yours. You're not necessarily trying to go out and find buyers. They're going to find you. So let's talk now about offers and getting under contract. So it is my job to present you with every single offer that we receive. I'll do so immediately. It has to be within a day. It's going to be within 5 minutes. I will be glued to my phone on those days. But that gets into the next step of how do you choose the right offer for you? And a lot of people think, and maybe this is true for you, that the highest price is the best offer. And it often is true. Maybe that's all you're looking for. You don't care about your timeline. You don't care about financing strength. You don't care about risk. You just see, hey, this is $5,000 more, we're done. And that's fine. We'll do that and make it work. But you have to understand that you are taking on some risk in that strategy. Maybe they don't have the strongest lender. Lender pulls out at the last second. What are you going to do now? Now we're back on the market. Maybe you have a very specific timeline. Maybe you are buying at the same time. Maybe you need the money from the sale to go buy, so it has to happen in a certain timeline. Maybe you bought and the person who you bought from can't move out for quite a bit of time. So you're going to need rent back for maybe 2-3 months. All of this, the flexibility, the timelines, the risk management, and of course the price, all are going to factor into what is the best offer for you. And the positive thing is most good agents will call me if I'm listing your home, and we can discuss your needs before they're submitting offers so that they know they can give you what you need, and all offers are then highly competitive, and you really are picking the one that is best for you, not settling for the one that just happens to meet your timeline. That's another point. If you are interviewing agents, ask them about how do they interact with other agents, when are you communicating with other agents throughout the process, and it should be before every showing, before every open house, before we're getting offers, as I'm submitting offers, whichever side of the transaction you're on, it should be almost constant communication with other agents so that they are setting you up to win. It's not fun to go to a showing, your agent has no idea what's going on with the house, now they can't get in touch with the other agent, they don't know what the sellers want when you're buying, they don't know what to tell buyers when you're listing. Communication is one of the biggest advantages of using an agent. Make sure that you have one that's actually doing it. And then the final point, and this is where your choice in agent starts to really become important. This is when negotiations start, when offers start flowing in. This is when maybe there's a gap in pricing, maybe there's a gap in a timeline, and it's helpful to have someone who is trained and has performed negotiations on essentially a daily basis for the last decade of their life. This is when the ability for someone to negotiate can be a 5-figure difference in what you're walking away with or without in an unfortunate case. So now let's talk about appraisal and moving towards closing. So ideally, everything gets appraised at value, the lender is good to go, and now there are no issues. Where issues crop up with appraisal is when there is an appraisal gap. So you have, let's say, $40,000 between what the sale price was and what the lender is willing to give. This is the next big point where negotiation strategy and capability is big. Who's going to make up that $40,000 gap, or is the deal going to fall through? There's a few ways to do it. You can meet in the middle, both sides cover 20, good negotiation. Maybe you know that seller has to get out of there, they're paying the whole thing. Maybe you know that buyer has to move in, let's get them paying the whole thing, whichever side you're on here. Or maybe there's some other concessions we can make. Maybe the buyer really wants a new deck, you can put a new deck in for them, but they're gonna cover that gap in appraisal. So there's a few different ways you can do it: renegotiate, restructure terms. You can challenge the appraisal with better comps. This is very big in the Philly suburbs. There's a lot of unique housing. There's a lot of older housing stock that is situated on private land. You might be pretty far from any neighbors. Maybe those neighbors haven't sold recently, so there aren't very many good comps. So I like to come prepared with a list of comps, what we think the appraisal should be at, so that if there is that gap, we are set up to challenge immediately rather than scrambling once we realize that there's an issue. So all of these are ways to go about dealing with a low appraisal. I would say the most common way it's dealt with is renegotiation. Sometimes that involves a restructuring of the contract. Challenging appraisals is much less common. It can be difficult, but it can be done. This is another point where negotiation is big. But throughout this appraisal process, throughout this closing process, it feels like you should be done when you're selling your house. You did a ton of work picking an agent, you did a ton of work determining price, marketing, you've just been out of your home essentially for some period of time with open houses, with showings, you've reviewed a bunch of offers ideally, and now you've made the hard decision of picking the best one for you. It feels like that should be the end of it. It's at this point where it's important to just stay on top of deadlines. It doesn't involve as much heavy lifting from a seller side, but it does involve making sure that everything is running smoothly so that we can get to closing without any hassle. So let's now talk about closing. I'll do this pretty quickly. There's not a ton of on the ground work for you to do, but I do think it's helpful to understand what the process is. So first, title gets cleared, the lender finishes underwriting, any appraisal issues have been dealt with. Then you get your final numbers on the closing disclosure. You want to review that early, so within 24 hours, within 48 hours of getting it, make sure all the numbers look good to you. I'll be doing the same, obviously, but it's better to have multiple sets of eyes. Don't do this the night before closing, because if there is an issue, now there's not time to go ahead and fix that without potentially blowing the deal up, or at, I guess, best, worst, however you want to think of it, delaying the deal. Next, the buyers are going to have their final walkthrough. They're confirming that the home is in the agreed upon condition. Any repairs, if any, are done. Repairs are another negotiation point that happen between the accepting an offer and closing timeline. On closing day, you're going to sign, funds are going to transfer, and then the deed records. So here's the key. All of that goes really smoothly when you're staying on top of the process and staying organized. Where it blows up is when you start looking at stuff the day before, when negotiations have gone south. Those are what kill deals in the last minute, in the 11th hour. So we want to avoid that. So that is generally how listing goes. Those are some of the strategy calls you're going to have to make. Those are some of the strategy calls that your agent is going to have to make. There is quite a bit more that goes into it in practice. If you're interested, I will put my full listing guide below. If you have any more questions, please throw them in the comments. You can reach out to me directly. I'll put my contact below as well. The next big post, I'm hoping it'll come out later this week, maybe early next week, is going to be my How to Buy series. And then we're going to start working through the actual nitty-gritty of some of the things we talked about today. So the appraisal process, the inspection process, the open house process, staging, all of it. But if you found this useful, I hope you did. Please like, follow, subscribe, do all the YouTube things. Check out my Instagram because it has a lot of more fun stuff over there, not me just talking at your face. It has a lot more Philly suburbs lifestyle stuff. We're getting a whole relocation section together on there, so that'll be very interesting to look at. But until next time when we're talking about buying, have a good one, guys.